We had a ban on advertising for pharmaceuticals. Unfortunately, it expired and it was never reinstated. I have supported legislation to either tax them, tax that money. They get to write it off as a business expense and say, no, we're going to actually tax your advertising. We've tried various things. We have not been successful, but my doctor complains about it all the time. I mean, I go in and he says, I don't have time to fight with people, and it's like they've seen this on television and they think they want it or need it, and he says, you got to tell you more often than not, I'll write the prescription even though there is something else I could do, but I don't have time to fight with them over it, and they're so set. And so it's really, there's almost as much money spent on advertising as on research. And they want to tell us, well, you're paying high prices because you're paying for research. No, we're paying high prices because you're advertising on television. And of course, but they also have the lobby of the broadcasters. The broadcasters went berserk when we said we might restrict or tax advertising of pharmaceutical companies. So, anyway. So on that side, Nancy, that gentleman.
I've been tracking you since you were a commissioner in Lane County, and I'm not only really extremely proud to have you as my congressman, I count you as one of the few American heroes. I really appreciate what you do for all of us. I would like to say that recently I've had the feeling that although I didn't read 1984 until 2000, it seems as though it became the Bible of the Republicans. They seem to think that if they say something over and over and over and over again, that the nation will believe it's true.
Yep.
And it feels to me as though we've not only lost the debate, we've lost the bully pulpit with the shenanigans that have gone on over the last year. I'm a retiree. I'm going to be Medicare next year. I have my income cut by nearly a third when I retired, and yet I'm saying to you, please tax me. So I would encourage you to encourage the Democrats in the Congress to get the message out in a more formidable way that we out here can hear something besides the rancor that is dominating the airwaves.
Okay. Well, as one member of Congress, I do my best. I rarely will turn down, a television appearance when offered, if at all. Sometimes it's Chris Matthews on at like 11 o'clock at night, and I've had a hard day in Washington, I'm not necessarily whatever, but almost all the time I will. I'll go on Fox, I'll go on wherever. And I'm very active with social media, getting stuff out there, so I'm trying to encourage my colleagues, but there is a certain timidity, shall we say, among some of my colleagues about getting out there on some of these issues. I mean, when I voted in December, I said, I voted to end all the Bush tax cuts and save the future of this country. And my colleagues say, oh my God, no, you can't say that. All you can say is, I voted to tax the rich. I said, no, I voted to end all the tax cuts, which will be a very small impact on middle income people, virtually nothing. But it would be a little bit of shared sacrifice, and it would be, $4 trillion over 10 years. It would be bigger than this deficit commission will ever do, or whatever we call this thing. So, and it's fair, and certainly worked in the Clinton years in terms of putting people back to work, and it gives us some money to invest in education and infrastructure and things like that need investment in this country. So I'm not shy about it. Some people are, a bit shy about it, and I'm not very happy with the president. So, he is not consistent and strong, and he doesn't seem to have the slightest idea how to bargain. So, we'll go over there, send her in the back, and then we'll come up front and try and go. She's giving you the microphone. She's right behind you.
I'm just curious about how close we are to having our debt not accepted, or people not willing to buy our debt, and how close we are to having the Treasury or the Federal Reserve monetizing our debt. Do you see that happening? How possible is it?
Sure. Two separate issues. One is how are we regarded in terms of the security of our debt? Well, it's been pretty interesting over the last 2 weeks. First off, it's a joke that Standard & Poor's downgraded us. I mean, these are the same people who knew the stuff on Wall Street was junk and gave it AAA. And because we have email chains from the employees saying, I can't rate this junk as AAA. This is like, B minus, and they're like rated or lead. So they manipulated the market along with the other ratings agencies. They were supposed to be part of financial services reform. They managed to get themselves out of it. which is very unfortunate, although now the Justice Department is investigating S&P, which I think is great. So for them to downgrade us over, over this dispute was pretty interesting. The other two agencies didn't. But since they downgraded us, people have started paying our government to hold their money. And that's actually happening. Short-term treasury bills now, 2-month treasuries. Last week, people were paying the government to take their money, paying negative interest rates. So I think people still look at us as the safest place to put their money. The euro, not so good right now. There has been a huge rush into Switzerland and the Swiss kroner or franc or whatever their currency is. And but they're really upset about that because it's made them, they're trying to figure out a way to drive down the value of their currency, and so they're way too small to absorb all that much money. So at this point, we're okay, but we have to have a plan. We have to have a long-term plan on how we're going to get back to a more fiscally responsible position in the not-too-distant future. And I don't think we didn't reflect that in this last debate. And if we don't talk about revenues, we don't really have a plan. It's got to be both spending reductions, ending our overcommitment as being cops of the world, and other prudent reductions in waste of the Pentagon and other programs of the federal government, and revenues. So we've got some breathing room, but it won't happen forever, because we're running 2 deficits, the second deficit being our trade deficit, which is also piling up dollars overseas. The largest holder of debt of the United States of America is Social Security. The second largest is China. Not so good. There's that. And the second part of the question was, I'm just getting monetizing. Oh, monetizing debt. We need better oversight of the Federal Reserve. They did things during this crisis that they wouldn't even allow Congress to know about. And we only found out about them. They fought bitterly until they lost the lawsuit, and they had to reveal what they had done. And they sent it to Senator Levin in the most unfriendly way possible. They dumped 29,000 pages of documents about what they had done in terms of propping up banks and other things, and all these other things they had done in a mixed up form with no index. But his staff has been plodding through it. There have been some excellent articles by a guy who writes for Rolling Stone. It's amazing. And in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, and in the Washington Post, it's a guy named Matt Taibbi, who writes for Rolling Stone, and he has gotten into some of those documents, and the stuff he's writing is just outrageous, what they did. And this is one where I'm with Ron Paul. We need to audit the Federal Reserve. The interesting thing is Ron had a bill to audit the Reserve. It passed the House, but it never passed the Senate. And now he chairs the subcommittee, and the Republicans are in charge, and somehow he can't move his bill to audit the Federal Reserve. So, that's interesting, but I'm on his bill, and I hope we get to vote on the bill, and I hope we move it, because I was mistaken when I said earlier that the Pentagon's the only agency. I mean, the Fed is sort of a quasi-independent, private public agency. That's another problem with it, is the Fed is it's basically run by the private banks, for their interests more than the public interest. There's a great book which is dated now on the secrets of the temple a number of years ago by a reporter who needed an editor because it was 700 pages long. But there's 2 or 3 good pages in there about what's wrong with the Fed and the way it operates, and how countries that have much more reason to be afraid of inflation than we do, like Germany, with their experience and others, have a transparent process when it comes to their central bank. When I first sponsored a bill to audit the Federal Reserve, when I was first in Congress, there was this wonderful old populist guy from Texas, Democrat, named Charlie Gonzalez. And he used to go down and give speeches, and I was just a young guy. I give speeches. I got friendly with him. He's a great old guy. And so he said, DeFazio, I'm going to introduce this bill to audit the Federal Reserve. I said, that sounds great to me. So I signed on, and there were 5 of us on his bill. He introduces it. The Wall Street Journal, I've only been named twice in editorials by the Wall Street Journal, actually wrote an editorial where they said, these 5 members of Congress wanted to destroy capitalism and the government because they want to audit the Federal Reserve. So